All right, welcome back, people of the internet, to another episode of the Waveform podcast. We're your hosts. I'm Marques.
And I'm Andrew.
And it's Apple event week. That's the biggest thing that happened this week.
Yep.
This was the first live event from really any major company so far this year, and it's Apple's first event. We knew it was coming. It's the spring event. We knew a bunch of the stuff that we are going to get, and we got some other surprises because I actually sort of successfully kept myself out of the rumors this time. And there's a bunch of new stuff.
Yeah, most of the rumors I saw were like a day or two before. So it kind of felt like there was some wonder in this event.
A little bit.
I
tweeted earlier, I missed the days where we had an event coming up and we had no idea what was going to be announced. That was a long time ago. But here we are. We can get the boring stuff out of the way first, I think. There's a lot of smaller things, a lot of little refreshes and updates. And I think we want to talk a little more at length about the studio stuff.
For sure.
Because that's up our alley.
Yes.
But off the top, what do we get? We got a nice Tim Cook intro.
Good morning and welcome back to Apple Park.
We got Apple TV to start.
Apple TV off the start. I think they started off with just kind of almost like a film reel of all their new shows and stuff that are coming out or new seasons of shows they have already. And the first thing I just thought was they're dumping a lot of money in. They're super serious.
Do you watch any Apple TV shows?
No.
I don't either.
I do. I need to watch Ted Lasso.
That's the one I keep hearing everybody likes.
I've heard there's some other really good ones, but I just haven't. I don't have Apple TV, but you could see there was Tom Hanks, Tom Holland. They had a ton of huge
Dua Lipa,
names.
Denzel Washington.
Mm-hmm. So they're clearly making the push in the streaming game. We all know everyone's trying to make a streaming platform right now. They're trying to get up there with Netflix and Peacock. But one thing I did think that was interesting that I have a little more of an opinion on is they're doing these MLB Fridays. I think it's baseball, Friday Night Baseball, it's called.
Yep.
They'll be playing 2 MLB games. I'm assuming it's every Friday. Mm-hmm. Two kind of interesting things about this. One, baseball's in the middle of a strike right now, I believe. So the timing of that is super unfortunate.
Oh, no.
Okay. And then, so my other thing about this that I don't really love is just that I saw it in the NHL this year where they started taking NHL games and making them exclusively on ESPN Plus, which is ESPN's streaming platform. Mm-hmm. And it's just a pain if you like a specific team and now you've lost your local broadcast of something to be exclusive on a streaming service and when it's like this, where it's only going to be 2 games on a Friday, your team, you're probably only going to miss 1 or 2 games. But if you're someone who really, really likes to watch every single game, it sucks to have to buy a streaming platform if all you're interested in is your MLB team, and now you're only going to use it for 2 games a season or something like that.
It's weird. They didn't go all in, basically. Yeah, it's not like
they can't go all in.
Yeah, you can't offer the entire thing exclusively, but they did pay. I assume they paid the MLB a good bunch of money for this, and I guess that's the idea. Is hey, you want to watch the games? Mm-hmm. Just join Apple TV.
And this isn't even I'm not super mad at Apple TV here. This is happening all over sports. I just don't love it in general. But it clearly is an interesting idea. If you're already an Apple TV user and you're a huge MLB fan, this might be really cool for you. You can get some out of non-local games that you can watch, and that's pretty fun. But it's clearly gunning at top streaming services. They're really putting all the marbles in for that.
It continues to evolve. I continue to watch none of them. I watch a lot of YouTube, and that's just me. Then we got the green iPhone mid-cycle refresh. So remember how it's usually, I guess it's been red a lot because they didn't launch a product red, and then 6 months later in March they do a red version. I think they did a purple one last year.
Was that last year?
Yeah,
I think
on the 12. It was the 12. So this year we got green. We got a green iPhone 13 and we got an Alpine green iPhone 13 Pro.
Yeah, I was a little confused when they first announced it because they said 2 stunning new colors. And to me, green
is one color,
despite it being 2 different greens. But when they announced it, it was when they say green, I knew it would already have to be 2 greens because the Pro versions are matte and the non-Pro versions are glossy. So I just kind of assumed that was one color. Mm-hmm. And then they kind of showed both of them and then just skipped to the next one. And we were all kind of at the studio was that 2? They said 2.
So it's just forest green, I think, for the 13. It's just
I think
a base.
It's just called green.
Yeah. But if I'm describing it for audio listeners, it's just imagine your standard default, slightly darker than normal green. And then the 13 Pro Alpine green, you're kind of your hat is closer to. It's like an olive green.
Shout out Moment.
Yeah.
shop
You
moment.
got head to toe green shades on,
this
kind of.
green?
Well, maybe I'm colorblind. Maybe that's kind of bluish.
Well, everyone in the audio version can now picture me wearing full green.
Head to toe green.
Head to toe green.
Yeah, no, it's like a military green. I've seen a car with this green, and it looked nice.
Love it.
So you're into the green.
Super into the green.
It's just funny how they just drop a new color. One of the ones that wasn't at launch. It could have been anything. I guess it could have been some other blue or whatever they wanted, but green was definitely not available at launch, and now here we are.
And they've done a green this feels like it was the 11. There was a pro version of the green, but it was more towards gray. This is like the greener version of that, but still in that that nature olive drab kind of like matte finish. I love it, honestly. I know you're into it.
I'm into the Alpine one. I'm not into the regular green iPhone, but I'm into the Alpine
I'll
green.
take that. You're usually pretty anti-green, so
it's just not my color. Like I don't wear green, so
I don't disagree with you. I like it. I can see why people don't like green generally, but
yeah, it's not easy being green.
Yeah.
Anyway, we got that. That was the simple, easy stuff. Then we got two new things that I would describe as like new chip, old body. Okay, iPhone SE and iPad Air.
Yeah.
iPhone SE follows the formula that we've seen from Apple from the last couple iPhone SEs, which is we've got the A15 Bionic, which is the newest chip, and it's inside the body of an old iPhone, which is the iPhone 8, basically. Home button, bezels, the whole deal. Now, putting an A15 Bionic in that older phone, and actually, this is a good clarification, a slightly higher capacity battery physically. So it's hopefully a more efficient chip. But the big problem with the last year's iPhone SE was small phone, powerful chip. You can burn through that battery kind of quick.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to see a larger capacity battery, and we'll be testing that. But yeah, the newer chip does allow for things like Smart HDR 4 Plus, photographic styles, like all the feature updates that are driven by the Neural Engine and the A15 Bionic. The camera quality should be better. Good stuff. So yeah.
It also has 5G now.
Exactly. So that modem is in there for 5G support. No millimeter wave, interestingly. So the 13 and 13 Pro that can do millimeter wave, this will not do millimeter wave.
Fair.
And then it lands at $429, which is a little bit more expensive
like $30
than the
right?
$399 of last generation's SE. My only thoughts were, like, when I first saw it, I was like, man, I was hoping this would be like a 12 mini body.
I think optimistically, I was hoping for 12 mini body. Pessimistically, I was hoping for at least like 10 body.
Yeah.
Like newer, updated notch, no more bezels, kind of that aspect.
I think the best argument, the best reason why they're not doing that is truly still the home button. People still need and want and buy and desire an iPhone with a home button. And there's a lot of iPhone 5, iPhone 6, iPhone 7, iPhone 8 users who are just used to a home button and just want a new iPhone and don't want to learn gestures, don't want to switch to this new form factor. And this is still Apple going, all right, we'll offer that for you. But yeah, they obviously can make this part in mass very cheap. And $429 is not the cheapest phone they've ever made, but it is still a competitive, lower price phone.
It's super competitive. It's great value. The SE always has been. I think my only argument against that they still really want to give someone the home button is if they're so adamant about giving people that option, why are you only giving it to them in the cheapest phone possible? Like, is there someone that wants a phone home button but wants normal, higher specs? Or is there somebody who doesn't want the home button but can't afford their top range stuff? It feels like you're splitting this in an unfair manner.
I feel like it's sort of a last resort thing. They don't want you to buy this phone.
Yeah, they
want you to spend more money.
Yeah.
So if you really have to have a home button, they do offer one, but they would much rather you buy an iPhone 13 right now at full price in green.
Yeah,
of course.
I'm surprised they haven't. Also, a lot of people wanted a headphone jack and they got rid of it. So there's plenty of things they've gotten rid of. I'm surprised the home button. Part of me thinks they just really did the iPhone 10 just sell so well they still have 8 stock left over, a bunch of manufactured bodies, and it's ready to go. But
yeah, no, this to me is interesting. We'll be testing it. It feels like a fascinating mishmash of parts. Like when you look at other budget phones, there are budget phones that have 120 hertz display, that have a larger screen than this, that have a 5,000 milliamp hour battery with 40 watt fast charging, that have some decent Qualcomm chip in there, 5G, all these things that you think they all just spank the iPhone. But the iPhone has a couple things. It's $429 and it has probably the most powerful chip in any phone ever made.
Yep.
It's wild. And it's $429 and has a very solid 12 megapixel camera that will probably outperform every other phone at that price. Like when you think of a $400 phone, you don't think of an amazing camera. The small exception might be an old Pixel or something like that. But yeah, iPhone SE, great camera. Other than that, very old dated hardware, very old screen, like 60 hertz, lower resolution, not as bright, like very old parts in there. So it's a weird mishmash of parts, but hey, this is iPhone SE. Special edition is what I think it originally stood for.
Yeah, you just mentioned SE stands for special edition. I've never really thought about it during the event yesterday, and yeah. Like
it's the least special. It's the most formulaic, boring phone they have.
Yeah,
it's the least special phone they have, but it's a special edition. Some people were saying it stands for or they should change the name to cheap, like the baseline edition, whatever. It is what it is.
Yeah.
We also got the iPad Air though. It's the same general formula, which is fascinating because it's another weirdly imbalanced thing. The iPad Air is $599. It's the same body, same fingerprint reader, same battery, it's like one extra color. There's a blue one now. Same camera, same all that.
Yeah.
But it has an M1 chip in it now, which matches the performance of the highest end. I guess you would have to pay $800 to get an M1 iPad Air. How much is an M1? I'm going to look that up. M1 iPad Air. Sorry, M1 iPad Pro.
Yeah.
If you wanted to get an M1 iPad Pro right now, you'd be paying at least $799. So I remember when I reviewed the last iPad Air, I actually called it an iPad Pro killer because the only thing you're missing, Dave and I were talking about this, the only difference between now the M1 iPad Air and the M1 iPad Pro is the max storage. You can get that 1 or 2 terabytes in the iPad Pro if that's what you're after. The extra cameras of the iPad Pro and LiDAR.
Everyone's dying for those.
And then ProMotion, nicer screen. And that ProMotion thing is the only thing that I actually prefer. You get Face ID, you get a slightly different bezel size, but really it's the same form factor between the iPad Pro and the iPad Air. Are the speakers that different? Maybe. I don't know. You get a Thunderbolt port on the iPad Pro versus a fast USB-C port on the iPad Air. Is that the difference that you're going to pay $200 for? Probably not. So for me, it's just a screen. It's the biggest difference.
Yeah.
How many people are going to buy the iPad Pro if you have an M1 iPad Air option? Not as many, I don't think.
I would really like to know. I feel like the people that would make that jump are artists using it as a tablet. And I can, without any knowledge and being a horrific artist, I can only assume the 120 hertz would actually be really beneficial. But if you're an artist or a drawer or a sketch, just like doing that, and have used 60 and 120 hertz, let us know. I would like to know how much it helps.
Question. Yeah, when I look at that too, even the iPad Air supports the newest gen Apple Pencil. So my question would be, how big is the difference in latency between that exact same pencil on those two different screens?
So while it's probably doing the exact same in terms of how specific it is and how well it's drawing, when you have that disconnect between your hand and what you're seeing on the screen and latency. Your brain, that latency can really, I'm assuming, mess you up. And probably even though it's a mental thing, I'm sure it's frustrating, and I'm sure there's people willing to pay an extra $200 for that.
Yeah, I'm still using my original, I guess it's 2018 or 2019 12.9 inch iPad Pro.
Yeah,
just because I've liked ProMotion and I've liked everything about it, and I've had no reason to upgrade since then. The M1 chip is amazing. Haven't needed it. It's crazy power.
Yeah.
That chip is, so they're going to put that chip in an iPad Air with iPad OS, and I'm going to have probably a lot of the same questions that I did about the iPad Pro, which is how much of a computer-like experience can you turn this into? But yeah, now it's $599 instead of $799.
Cool. Yeah.
Nice.
That's awesome.
So yeah, that's sort of the boring stuff, but we definitely got to get into this new M1 Ultra chip, the Mac Studio, and this new Studio display. We'll get into all of that after the break. Be right back. This episode of Waveform is brought to you by Indeed. So as you know, running a podcast takes a lot of work. I can't research the latest tech news and produce the show and mix and master the show and find all the ads all on this one show.
No, it takes a whole team, as you can see. To put the show together, I know how important a team is to your success, and Indeed wants to help you find those qualified candidates to make your business the best it can be.
So Indeed is a hiring partner that allows you to attract, interview, and hire all in the same place. So you can find quality candidates who fit your needs without spending hours and hours at multiple job sites. Indeed is there for you every step of the way. And with tools like Instant Match, assessments, and virtual interviews, you can feel confident you're making the right call.
And since you are a listener of this podcast, Indeed is offering $75 sponsored credit to help you find the must-have candidate you're looking for. That's right. Start hiring right now, right this minute. Today, with a $75 sponsored credit to upgrade your job post at Indeed.com/Waveform. I hit the mic with the slash.
Perfect.
Never a great sign.
Offer is valid through March 31st. Go to Indeed.com/Waveform to claim your $75 job credit before March 31st. Indeed.com/Waveform. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. All right, welcome back. Let's talk Apple Silicon update and the new computer that they launched and the new display. You want to do the chip first? I guess that makes the most sense.
Yeah, let's do, because I feel like the chip kind of is what this is all based on, and honestly, what we're most excited about.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, so we already knew. We set the stage. We got the M1 chip, and that filled out Mac Mini, MacBook Air, Mac, iMac. Great chip, very like baseline, but obviously very capable for almost everyone's regular use.
It's weird calling that baseline.
It's really good.
It is. Yeah,
it's really good.
Crazy
we
good.
reviewed it. It's out there. That's the baseline stuff. Then we got, and it's in a MacBook Pro. That's how good it is. 13-inch MacBook Pro. So then we got M1 Max and M1 Pro. So M1 Pro being a step up and M1 Max being the highest end. And those show up in MacBook Pros. And this thing right here, the 16-inch MacBook Pro that I'm using with the M1 Max chip in it, monster chip. Yeah. Amazing. Incredible efficiency, great battery life, but also it's outperforming literally iMac Pros, some Mac Pros out there, especially in Apple's native apps. Incredible stuff. M1 Ultra is the name of the new chip that just got announced.
Yeah, let's start right there because...
With the name?
Yeah, because it's a name we've debated about for a while. I guess we've been talking about the Mac Pro chip and what its name was going to be.
Right.
This is not quite there, but is obviously the upgrade. I think people were thinking M1X. You were thinking M2 for a little bit because we weren't sure like if this was going to keep the M1 line. So we're on the M1 line, M1 Ultra.
I was thinking it might have been M1 Extreme or something. Like that sounds like something Apple would call it.
Yeah, but there's Intel Extreme stuff, so I feel like they're going to try and stay away from that. That's my guess why they wouldn't go
see them
extreme.
Like leaning in. Like, yeah, we do Extreme too, and it's way better than yours.
There's clearly some things they don't care about and just pretend other companies don't exist.
I mean, Samsung makes an Ultra.
Exactly.
Really
Samsung had a pretty funny tweet that was just like, green? Ultra? We're flattered by the...
Nice. Yeah. Nicely done. Wow, Samsung getting a little shout out. Yeah. Well played.
I just don't like the name, to be honest. No real reason why. I just don't think it's that fun.
You know, it's funny. I never liked M1 Max either because we're talking about M1 Max Max and a Mac with M1 Max. Like it's not a good name.
True. At least it's not a tongue twister.
Yeah. So I got over the names and how I don't like any of them a long time ago because the chips are so good. I'm like, whatever, fine. So the M1 Ultra is basically two M1 Maxes together. We've been hearing about this die design and how they're going to have essentially they're going to cut out. It's like, imagine it's funny because it's not a square anymore. It's a rectangle.
Well, now it's a rectangle.
Yeah. So it's a rectangular chip with a super fast, super high bandwidth connection between them. 2.5 terabytes per second between the two chips should basically allow them to communicate with zero latency, and the whole system sees it as one mega chip.
It was like Exhibit was like, yo dog, we heard you like M1 Max. Why don't you have two?
We put a pair in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's funny. Dave 2D brought this up in his video. Like there are dual socket systems. They've been out there for a long time. You can actually get a motherboard and put two CPUs on it and two coolers and run a system with two chips. But having the system see it all as one is way more efficient, and it's just a better way to do it.
Yeah.
So we saw this coming, but it's here. It's massive. We get the crazy speeds. It's a 20-core CPU, 16 of those being performance cores, 4 of those being high-efficiency cores. And there's a 48-core or 64-core GPU version of this.
Yep.
And I think it's a 64 or 128 gigs of unified memory.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, that's pretty sick. That's a lot of big numbers.
They are big numbers.
They did the whole graph thing they always do, which is they show not really well labeled graphs.
Did you notice the graph is always the same length away no matter what? It would be like a quarter of it is always the competitor, but then the top bar is like 2 times faster, 3.7 times faster. Yeah. It's always the same amount.
It's the same shape of a graph every time.
Yeah,
but they'll like change the asymptote so they'll change the axis to say 100. But like, what test are you running? Yeah. Like, what benchmark? What app is this even?
Yeah.
I did see the fine print, and they mentioned certain GPUs by name. RTX 3060 Ti is going to be more efficient than that chip. It's going to draw 200 watts less power than an RTX 3090 at the same performance.
Yeah, a lot of the graphs were also like super specific. Like you said, it's like outperforms blah, blah, blah at this much less power. Yeah. And so I don't know. They're not one-to-one, like, which they never really are. But
basically my take from this was like, okay, I can't really learn much from Apple's hand-picked tests. But what I did pick up is that they compared this frequently to the highest end iMac Pro and the Mac Pro. Mm-hmm. And obviously it's called the Mac Studio that this computer is hosting this M1 chip in. We'll talk about the computer in a second. Yeah. But this chip is actually more capable in a lot of things than any chip they've ever put in any Mac. And that is like a question I was asking in my video. Is just like, okay, we've seen the event. Is this the highest end chip they need to make? And the answer turned out to be no. And we'll get to that in a second.
Well, they also did though mention that this is the full M1 lineup. Right around here, they did say
so. There's some naming specifics that we can get into. We'll probably talk about that with the Mac Pro.
Yeah, we will definitely talk about that.
But bottom line is this M1 Ultra chip seems to be awesome, and I cannot wait to start testing it. That being said, the computer that it's in is called the Mac Studio. Mm-hmm. So they announced the Mac Studio alongside the new monitor, which is the Studio display. And it basically looks like a super thick Mac Mini. I'm giving that about 4 Cs. It's like several Mac Minis stacked on top of each other.
Yeah, 3.7 inches tall, which seems really small, but like I guess the regular Mac Mini is probably only like an inch and a half.
It's like an inch and a half. Yeah. So it's looking like it ate a bunch of other Mac Minis, basically.
They Kirby'd another Mac Mini.
Essentially. So it's tall. It's got these heat sinks. I think basically half the internal volume is heat sink.
Yeah, I actually got a little excited off the start because, so you know how it's pretty much like a rounded square, and then on the bottom it has a circle that's all the vents. Mm-hmm. So they started when they announced it with this like crazy close-up of a bunch of holes and circular, and I was like, oh my God, they're bringing the trash can back. And I literally said it out loud and got excited. And then I realized it was just the bottom that you almost never see. And I got
somebody who made that render was probably thinking that the whole time, like somebody's going to think it's a Mac Pro circle again.
You got me if you're watching.
But it is actually a remarkably similar thermal design. It's taking in cool air from the bottom, which the trash can Mac Pro did. It cools all the components and then exhausts hot air out the top, or in this case, the back. But this is Apple's own silicon. This isn't a huge GPU inside.
Exactly.
It's very different.
I think that's the biggest thing, because when you had the trash can Mac Pro and it started having problems, it was very specifically the GPU that was starting to cause issues.
Spitting flames, man.
I mean, and jamming that inside that small, where it only had vents on the top and bottom, and the outside was like literally completely shut.
It never stood a chance. Yeah, Looking back, it was insane. So this Mac Studio, it's got a bunch of real ports, got a bunch of Thunderbolt ports on the back. It's got 10 gig Ethernet, HDMI, 2 USB-A ports still. It's got the high impedance headphone jack from the MacBook Pro, it looks like. And there's front I/O also.
Yeah.
Front ports. I think that's nice because this is clearly something that goes on your desk. And there's an SD card reader right on the front of the thing.
Yep. Awesome.
Thank you. The Mac Mini always had it on the back. That always drove me insane. And they still put the power button on the back. Fine, I can reach around and hit that. But if I just want to hit the SD card slot right in the front, love that. So that's in the front along with 2 USB-C ports. If you get the M1 Ultra version, those are 2 Thunderbolt ports.
Yeah.
Cool. I don't know. Any thoughts on this design? I mean, it's clearly extremely small for the amount of power it's kicking out.
That's what I think is really cool about it. And in a very specific scenario like here, where people make fun of your cable management fairly often because you're...
Oh, this is huge for me.
So, we have the Mac Pros. I'm someone who put it on my desk, but it takes up a large amount of my desk.
Yes.
You have double monitors, you have big studio speakers, like it cannot fit on your desk. So you have your computer on the ground all the time, which means all of your wires always have to have slack for being able to go to sitting to standing.
That's something people don't understand.
Yep.
I want to just bring up the fact that PewDiePie roasted my setup because all he did was see the disc in the standing position and saw all those cables dangling there and said, Marques, what's good with the wires?
Yep.
Bro, it's impossible. I mean, you can do it, but you spend a serious amount of cable management. And as someone who switches computers every couple of years, I'm not trying to do that. Just trying to make that work. So yes, with this, it'll be on my desk and I'll have the cleanest setup you've ever seen. No wires anywhere.
I'm very excited. Looking forward to seeing it. But the fact that you can literally, like, you could stack that between your two monitors right now. Have all the wires.
I think that's the move.
Yeah, it's going to look so much nicer. It is crazy you can get that much power out of something that small that can fit on your desk. I feel like 12 South or something is going to do. It'd be really see if they made some sort of mount to go onto the back of monitors, because that would be really sick. That's what I always love doing with small form factor computers.
Yeah.
This is a little thicker though, maybe not work.
When you
as well.
said 12 South, I actually pictured them making like a tray.
Wait, so are you thinking of like the old iMac stands we had?
Kinda.
Okay, yeah.
So I'm picturing a tray, because the one thing, we'll talk about the monitor in a second, but people are like, why is there no wireless charger in the stand? Apple was never going to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But what if they just made a tray where you put the Mac there, you got like a wireless charger, a spot to charge your phone maybe, and then like some spots to hold like SD cards and stuff, and it's just all neatly in this little metal tray with felt on the inside, so it's soft.
Yeah.
That would be cool. I could see them making that. But yes, a backpack type thing where you put it on the back of a monitor.
Yeah.
It can fit.
Do you remember our iMac stands for the iMac Pro? It was kind of like, it was basically like a little box where, since the iMac isn't height adjustable, it would like boost it up a little bit. You and I are both tall. That helps immensely. And then it would give you like a little slot to store some things under.
Yeah.
But I could see 12 South making a case where you could scoot the new studio display stand on top of it safely.
By the way, 12 South, we'll take a solid 10% of all of these ideas when you do eventually come out with them, because clearly we're the only ones who have these ideas.
Yep.
No, yeah, I like it a lot. Something also, since I put out this video, Dave 2D, again, he's a sleuth. He's all over apple.com. Found that the M1 Ultra version of this Mac Studio weighs 2 pounds more than the M1 Max version. Thought that was curious. And the two possible speculations we had were either, number one, they've done some sort of a different heatsink design in the M1 Ultra version, or number two, there's just a bigger power supply in the M1 Ultra version, which weighs more because it's an internal power supply.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting random quirk. If you're thinking about putting it behind the monitor as a backpack, you should know if you get the 7-pound version versus the 5-pound version. I guess that should matter a little bit.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
I cannot wait. I'm sure he's going to sleuth into that further and try and figure out what exactly it is.
Yeah, we're going to get both. I don't know if, I'm guessing they pop open the same way a Mac Mini does. The bottom part, you just unscrew it basically and you can look inside, but we'll see.
Can we actually talk about that a little bit? Because this was something right after they announced the studio, they said or actually I think it was right before, they said there's 3 main things we want to accomplish with the Mac Mini or the Mac Studio: performance, connectivity, and modularity.
And finally, many want a modular system and display so they can create their perfect setup.
And the modularity thing made me think we were getting a Mac Pro. And then the Mac Mini comes out, which I think we all know is like not exactly what we would consider modular. And after that, he did say, many want a modular system and display so they can create their perfect setup. It kind of feels like all they're saying is you get to choose your own monitor.
That's the only thing I could say is modular about this.
But in that, it also does say modular system, which feels like the system, not including externals or peripherals. So that part confused me.
That part feels like a lie.
Exactly.
This is a computer that is not designed to be user serviceable. The 128 gigs of video memory you can never change once you buy it.
Yeah.
All of this like spec changing, like you can't do anything once you get it. I mean, other than like change a fan out or something if it breaks, but like that's not even on you. It's not modular at all.
No.
Yeah, you can change your own display.
Yeah.
BYOD.
I thought that was an interesting word
I would never use modular to describe this. Okay, so that's the M1 Ultra's Mac Studio, right? So we've got the computer. They announced it alongside this display, this gorgeous display, and it looks just like a Pro Display XDR. But basically what it is for $1,600, they took the display out of the 27-inch iMac and just made it a standalone.
Is it the same aspect ratio?
It's the same display.
Oh, okay.
All of it.
It just looks different because it doesn't have a chin on it anymore.
Exactly. Okay. So it doesn't have the screen. It doesn't have, the computer behind it. It doesn't have the chin anymore. They've taken the same 27-inch 5K display. I think it's 600 nits now instead of 500. That's the only difference.
Yeah.
Same, aspect ratio, pixel density, all that stuff. And they've repackaged it. So it's a nice display. It looks like the Pro Display XDR, but it doesn't need the heatsink holes on the back. So it's just a flat metal back.
Yeah, it looks like if Pro Display XDR and the iMac, the M1 iMac kind of, because like the stand and the thinness is closer to that, but the feeling and look of it feels like XDR.
And then it's got 3 ports on the back, 3 USB-C.
I think it was
2 USB-C.
3 USB-C and a Thunderbolt.
Okay, so it's got your ports on the back. It has a 12 megapixel webcam, which the Pro Display doesn't have, and it's an ultra wide webcam with the center stage feature.
Yeah, and it has an A13 inside the monitor, right, for crazy. That.
It
and
does.
The speakers, yeah.
So the triple mic array and the webcam powered by literally a high-end smartphone chip from 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And 6 speakers with Atmos and spatial audio as well.
They said those speakers are the best they've ever put in a Mac, which to me, I am using the 16-inch MacBook Pro, and this is the best speakers I've ever heard in a Mac.
Yeah.
Because like, what other built-in speakers do you really care about? The desktop never has good speakers. So I'm interested to hear what those sound like.
Yeah, and I also, a lot of people are going to say, who cares about speakers inside of a monitor? And it's easy to agree with that. At the same time, if you're someone who's 99% of the time using headphones for your work, which I think on there's going to be a lot of video editing and potential music editing and audio editing on this.
Yeah.
I think that will be the case. But every once in a while, you just want to like show someone something quick. And if you don't have the full like speaker setup, having just those really quickly to unplug your headphones, show somebody something so you can both listen to it as an example, and then plug it back in. It's actually really beneficial, I think.
Yeah. I was calling this studio display basically everything that it's everything that LG Ultrafine 5K ever wanted to be. Remember that thing from like 6 years ago?
Yeah.
It came out right alongside a couple other Macs, and it was like, oh, nice. Okay, with one cable, you can plug it into your laptop. It'll charge the laptop. And you get this gorgeous 5K display, which is like, okay, that's the same resolution Apple's been using and all that. Cool. They just killed that product basically, but it's more expensive.
Yeah.
And the stand, this is where it gets kind of interesting, at least for me. Okay, so $1,600 just for the baseline.
Yes.
Add $300 if you want nano texture.
Yeah.
Add $400 if you want height adjustability at all.
Yeah, so pretty much regular default stand it comes with is like the iMac stand, which is just tilt. And
just
then
tilt.
If you want the kind of XDR-esque stands,
it doesn't rotate to portrait like the XDR.
It doesn't do that.
But it just adds height adjustment.
It adds that extra hinge to get the height.
That's all you get, height
for $400
adjustment. $400 for height adjustment.
So you could easily $700. So you're looking at like, what is that?
Now it's an over $2,000 monitor. Yeah. So does it kill the LG Ultrafine 5K? No, there's a lot of other monitors that do a lot of things that are close, but not quite like it.
Wait, slightly off topic. Was the Ultrafine, was that the one that was interfering with routers back in the day?
Yes, they had to release an update.
Problem. Yeah, that was really fun.
Yes, that was like a plastic monitor, right? It had a webcam, but I'm sure it wasn't very good. It had built-in speakers, but I'm sure those weren't 6-speaker Dolby Atmos like amazing. Was it height adjustable?
I'm pretty sure it had a
So it doesn't cost $400 extra. So like that launched at like $1,300. It's still $1,300. That's still a display that a lot of people will probably get if they only want to spend $1,300. Yeah. But if you want the extra bits of like Apple doing first party well, like this studio display will clearly pair well with any Mac. The webcam is, has the highest powered ISP probably in any monitor ever. Yeah. So you got A13 in there, center stage. You got great speakers, great mics. So yeah, I can see people with MacBook Pros who didn't want to get a $6,000 Pro display getting this instead.
Yeah.
And a lot of people who get the Mac Studio getting this as well. It's interesting that it's not updated at all in any sort of color capacity. Like if you're doing studio stuff like video editing, the 5K iMac display was good, but it's not $1,600 like standalone display good. So I'm curious to see what kind of people end up choosing that over the other options. I was personally selfishly hoping it would be higher refresh rate, 120 hertz. Totally unnecessary for a studio display, but I just want a higher refresh rate display in the inevitable most powerful Mac ever made. So.
Yeah, this feels like the toned down version of XDR though. So while still a pretty high price point, I don't see them giving it anything that's going to outperform the XDR display.
Oh yeah, that's fair. Well, I mean, it does though. It has much better speakers and a much better webcam.
True, yeah.
But as far as the display quality, it's not going to touch the XDR. Yeah. So fair. Okay. So that's the studio display.
I think like in that really quick, there was some debate on Twitter about
I love it.
The about how much this is worth, and it seems pretty. No one's or there's both sides. Some people think this is totally not worth it because you could just get the old Ultrafine. Yeah. And while it's still $1,300, people are saying you can get it used for quite a bit cheaper.
Sure.
And then this is like $1,600 for a 5K display. There's a lot of people saying compare it to something else, but not a lot of people make 5K. Apple seems to be the only people making 5K. So it's hard to find a direct comparison here.
It's hard to find comps. That's what it comes down to. So yeah, I guess I find I'm probably somewhere in the middle where I can only recommend this to people who know what they want and this is what they want. If I specifically want a 5K display that's going to work well specifically with my Mac, this is one of the best options.
Yeah.
Right? There's only a couple.
Yeah.
It's going to be the best built. It's going to have the best speakers. It's going to have the best camera, I'm assuming. And it's going to work well as far as, I don't know, there's no Face ID, but I mean, it's got an A13 Bionic inside.
Yeah.
It's great.
I think if you're a bargain hunter, I don't think you're getting a bargain with this. But
no,
if you buy this, you're not going to feel ripped off.
Yeah. So that's the other side. Oh, yeah. Do you want a bargain? Do you want the best bang for your buck as far as like, I want a high resolution display to pair with my Mac? Okay. Yeah. Check out the Dell Ultra Sharps, check out the LG 5Ks, check out the other displays. If you want high refresh rate, there's other options. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's, you got to know what you want. And for some people, a studio display is exactly what they want, and that's cool. So I guess, yeah, all of that paired together makes a pretty solid announcement, but then they ended it with a pretty brutal teaser, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah.
Just because, like, I know what I'm here for.
First.
I actually did miss it. Yeah. I was listening to 4 different things at once, and I didn't catch it.
You were, like, tweeting and everything.
Yeah, I was taking my notes, but apparently, so John, at the end, the final presenter before Tim Cook said,
together with the studio display, these products will empower users to create the studios of their dreams and to continue to change the world. And they joined the rest of our incredible Mac lineup with Apple Silicon, making our transition nearly complete with just one more product to go, Mac Pro. But that is for another day.
But that's just for another day. On to you, Tim, and just moves on. Okay, so that's the one I've been waiting for. So my question this entire time, and we'll get more into this after the break, was, is the Mac Studio a Mac Pro Mini or a Mac Mini Pro?
Yeah, that's very...
Right? It's just it's a small difference, right?
Is it a better Mac Mini or a
mini Mac Pro?
Yeah, it's very...
And the answer is because of his statement, it's a Mac Mini Pro.
Yeah.
Right? It's a really, really good, powerful chip in a computer that goes on your desk.
Mm-hmm.
But the Mac Pro is still coming later. It just happens to be so powerful that it's outperforming the current Mac Pro.
One, yeah.
That's how good it currently is.
I mean, we've seen that before, like when the MacBook Air M1 came out, and there were still
and they were like, is this a Mac Pro? Is this a
Mm-hmm.
MacBook Pro? No, it's just so good that by the time they get to refreshing the next one, that's the next level up.
The transition's going to have some weird in-betweens here.
Yeah. So let's take a quick break and come back and talk about that Mac Pro. All right, we back. Welcome to the least useful, most emotional part of the podcast for me.
Yeah, the back end of the podcast, what it usually is.
We save the best for last. Okay, so we know what we've got announced.
Yes.
The M1 lineup is actually now complete.
Yes.
Because what Apple said is this completes the M1 lineup. So that's the M1, the M1 Pro, the M1 Max, and the M1 Ultra.
Yes.
Which means we're going to get a Mac Pro, and it won't have an M1 in it. It'll have something else.
Yeah, this is something I double-checked multiple times, is they had 2 very specific statements that I'm sure were worded very on purpose, which was...
We're adding one last chip to the M1 family, and it's going to blow your mind.
And then when they were talking about form factor computers, they said, this is the Apple Silicon lineup, everything except for one, which is Mac Pro. So they specifically did not say M1 there. So we're assuming that now Mac Pro this is our speculation, not M1.
So
what do you want to get into first here? Naming?
I guess my speculation starts with naming.
Yeah, let's go straight into naming. I
think the way this roadmap plays out is we're going to start to see the refresh of the new versions of those M1 chips around the same time we see the new Mac Pro. So I think we're going to get an M2 in all of the baseline stuff that we currently have an M1 in.
Okay.
So we have an M1 iPad, M2 iPad, M1 MacBook Air, M2 MacBook Air. I think we're going to get an M2 Pro and an M2 Max in these MacBook Pros.
Yep.
And then we're going to get an M2 Ultra in the Mac Studio. And I think they need an M2 Extreme or something else
Mega
for the Mac Pro. Mega. Yeah, they're going to have to come up with another word, another name.
I'm not banking on a good one, but.
And that will be, so we're just skipping M1 altogether for Mac Pro. And it will be on the same architecture as M2. So they'll probably have more density. I don't know if it's 4 nanometer, but more transistors, all this stuff for M2. We do all that for all the M2 series. And then that same architecture gets like a quad chip for the M2 Extreme.
Yeah, like a
Mac
4
Pro.
times pretty much.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's my theory based on what I've seen and how it's timed out.
So after a lot of thought into this, at first I was wondering if there would just be like an M1 Ultra 2. I don't want to call it like I don't know, like an upgraded M1 Ultra that could be in a Mac Pro. And then I think I've eventually came to the point where you are, but I have one more thing in there, which is if that is the case, if they do a full M2 refresh of everything and then do a 5th M2 chip for the Mac Pro, when do you see the Mac Pro coming out? Because that's where I've gotten to this point of.
Yeah, so the last Mac Pro, we got an unveiling at WWDC, which was like June, and then they said it's coming by the end of the year, and I think it came out in like November or December. So I kind of just, whenever I make predictions about the future of Apple, they are so like consistent with so many things. I tend to just look backwards to be able to look forwards. So I would guess that we see an unveiling of this new Mac Pro at WWDC 2022, and it's out by the end of the year, along with some other M2 stuff.
So that's where I'll disagree, I guess.
Okay.
So, and my reasoning for it is, if you're going to release the M2, Mega Ultra, we can just call it whatever, it feels really hard to me, because if they're going to release that end of year, that means they're basically going to be releasing it before most of the other M2s, right? The next generations. Maybe you're starting to get the beginning of the M2 and like the upgraded Air at the end of the year, the upgraded MacBook Air.
Yeah, maybe they do refresh everything. That's a fast cycle.
I feel like it would make more sense for them to introduce M2 on the lower end, kind of like what they did with M1, and then you're going to slowly build. So each one you can say, we're more powerful, we're more powerful, we're more powerful. So when you start at M2 Mega, everything after that is now downgraded in terms of release. I mean, still really good, still different price points, so they're still super worth it. But it just feels, from an announcement standpoint, to be weird to be like, you can't do anymore. This is the fastest chip Apple's ever made. That's like their freaking mantra. Yeah,
because basically they've announced these new chips in progressive order of power. Right?
Exactly.
They announced the M1, and then they did the more powerful M Pro, and then M1 Max, and then the even more. So I guess so. Are they beholden to doing that again? Or are they allowed to announce the M2 Mega in the desktop, but obviously that doesn't fit in the other machines, so then we'll also do M2 Pro later? Is that weird?
I think so. So to me, it makes me sad. I think they're going to talk about more Mac Pro at WWDC, and then I don't think we're going to see M2 Mac Pro for another year.
Well, they did promise a two-year transition, so that's kind of funny if they announce it and then just don't put it out. I think
that
as far as like,
true. I didn't take that into consideration.
Yeah, the end of the 2 years is the end of this year.
Yeah.
So
unless do they count it as the full transition, as it's like it's being developed, it's just not out yet?
That's tough. I want it to be out.
I don't think so. I know you want it to be out. No part of me is thinking, I'm not being like, yo, Apple, Marques really wants to wait another year for this. Could you slow it down?
It's funny because I also do think that the general idea of what we're expecting from that chip and what it'll do is already pretty set. Like, we know what this Jade 2 die with 2 chips and the fusion layer in between, we already know what that is and what it does. If they just do that again, now there's 4. That's what we're expecting the Mac Pro to be. So what, 40-core CPU, 128-core GPU, 256 gigs. Oh, no, we have to 256 gigs of built-in memory. We're just doubling the M1 Ultra. And
well, you're doubling the M1.
I'm doubling the M1 Ultra, not knowing that maybe there could be a little extra juice in there for M2 Ultra.
But yeah, so that's the thing. Also, if we're going to get the M2 Mega, which we assume is like 4 times what the M2 Max would be, or 2 times the M2 Ultra. What is the M2 Ultra? What are the specs on that? What's the upgrade on there that then you're doing twice that again to get to 4 times the M2 Max?
But we might just be like nitpicking just because like the fundamentals of it will be the same. It will be that 4x size. It will be that 4x
4x of what
transistors,
M2 is.
4x capabilities generally, and like the best, most optimized apps will get a huge bump in performance. Maybe not a 4x, but like if they're efficient, if they're Apple first-party apps, maybe they'll get 4x performance, right?
Yeah. So
that's the general theory behind it, and like, God, I am very excited to see a machine that can do 4x what this Ultra can do. Because it's basically 4x what the current Mac Pro can do.
So wild because I feel like we're still on the high of what just M1 Pro and M1 Max really gave us. Like people are still, I mean, Tim just got his laptop. People are still just getting those MacBook Pros and really understanding how powerful they are. And Apple's just like double it, quad it.
Yeah. I guess it's that
stonks.
the pace of development isn't necessarily higher. They've developed M1, and they're just shipping larger and larger cuts of the same general thing. If that's, I'm oversimplifying.
Yeah.
But so now that we get like a 2x version, it's like they didn't have to do an entire year of development to see how are we going to double the number of transistors in the same amount of space. No, they just have a double the size chip.
Yeah.
So I don't think we're that far out from actually seeing a chip capable of all that. They just need to develop the machine it goes in. And like decide what kind of tower this actually looks like.
Great segue because I think form factor is the next most interesting thing about a new Mac Pro because it clearly right now the Mac Pro is gigantic. It needs to fit a motherboard. It needs to fit different things in the PCIe slot. It needs to fit so much and still have a ton of extra space because it needs to cool it so much.
Mm-hmm.
You drop down to being Apple Silicon now and you're seeing this Ultra in a basically like beefed up Mac Mini. What is the Mac Pro going to look like?
Okay, so this is something I've thought about a lot. I will attempt to describe the way I think roughly a new Mac Pro would look like with our theoretical, let's just call it an M1 quad, right?
Okay.
I've had like 7 different names for it already.
I like Mega. I'm already at the point where I'm going to be sad if it's not called Mega just because we said it so many times in this podcast.
Okay, so this M1 Mega. So right now you can still buy an Intel Mac Pro from Apple.com if you really want to.
Mm-hmm.
For $50,000.
They just released a new one also.
They just updated the GPU. Exactly. You can get a different graphics card. For $50,000, you can get 2 dual-sized, dual-slot workstation cards, a 28-core Xeon, a 1.5 terabyte of DDR5 RAM, and 8 terabyte SSD, and some wheels, right? Oh, and don't forget the, what's that card called? I just forgot. It's the ProRes card.
Oh,
Afterburner. You can get an Afterburner card for $2,000 in there, right? The Afterburner card is completely unnecessary in the new one because that's basically built into the media engine, which gets doubled every time the chip gets doubled. The built-in chip in the Ultra can do 18 concurrent ProRes 8K 422 files at once, playback. So you don't need a ProRes card. You don't need the Afterburner card anymore. So scrap that. That's out of here. So then I just think about like thermal envelope and how small can this thing be? I think it will be an on-desk computer size again. And I'm trying to describe this correctly, about the size of the Yamaha HS8 studio monitor on my desk.
Okay.
If people don't know how big that is, that's basically picture like a MacBook Pro up on its side. Picture a cube that big.
Yeah, I'm going to say like
a 14-inch laptop.
Foot tall, foot long.
Not even a foot tall.
Not even a foot tall?
Actually, it's a foot tall. That's actually a good measurement.
I'm also going to quickly do this in metric so people on
Good call.
Okay, 1 foot is 300 millimeters. So
right, tall. So picture a 300 millimeter cube, a 1 foot cube, something roughly like that.
Okay.
Right. So you can put it on your desk if you want to. And I think a chip that big can use half of that space for cooling. And then Apple just needs to decide what types of add-on real modularity they want to support. Do they want us to be able to slot in like actual extra GPU power? Because there's going to be an absurdly powerful GPU built in already. Does that need to even exist? Don't know. Do they want us to be able to slot in additional storage? Lots of professionals need to be able to slot in additional storage.
I think additional storage is the biggest thing that's going to separate this from the studio.
Additional I/O and networking, a lot of people need in their professional environments to be able to slot in, hey, I need 8 more Thunderbolt ports for this thing. Hey, I need, 4 gigabit Ethernet ports just for this computer. Every time I buy one, I'm going to need an expansion card basically for that. What types of expansion cards will work? How will they interface with the motherboard? Don't know yet, because we have PCIe on these regular boards. I don't know what that looks like yet. But I think generally, give us that SD card slot. Go crazy, Apple. Put an SD card slot built into this thing.
Put a Red Mag reader.
Whoa.
Oh, wait, we're not even like shooting on Red Mag anymore. Really.
Red Mags are dead.
They're dead.
They shoot to cards now.
Should be,
yeah. No, but they can make a bunch of decisions between now and that unveiling, and they can put that thing in the size of like about a shoebox.
A shoebox is
a big
very
shoebox.
Good. Yeah, I was thinking the NZXT H1 case. It almost would just be like if you took the now Mac Studio and
stacked
them pretty much. I mean, like still reasonable height. It would almost look like a really beefy, maybe like router or something like that.
Yeah,
a little taller, a little more space for some airflow, a little more space for maybe something that's expandable. Tower, but like super reasonable tower.
Yeah, I'm excited. I mean, honestly, the power of, I think I saw there's a tweet, I think it was from last night or something like that, where someone just tweeted like, what kind of workflow do you have to think you need to keep waiting for a more powerful computer over this Mac Studio? The Mac Studio is incredibly powerful. And if you are a After Effects editor, even a Final Cut editor, whatever, like you just got the do-all machine. It does everything you want, right? And that's what I thought about the Intel Mac Pro. And I still make that thing basically, I'm not going to say choke.
You've messed that thing up.
But I've had it reach its limits several times.
Yeah.
That thing has 768 gigs of RAM. Like on paper, I never thought I'd reach the limit of that machine. And here I am wishing for more. So, when I see that there's a new Mac Pro coming, clearly there are not just workflows, but there are use cases, I think is a better word, that still need real modularity, that still need real expandability. And those people are definitely going to be waiting for real Mac Pro Tower. Yeah. I am one of those people who's just like working with enough high resolution footage and plugins and concurrent apps and things like that, where I actually do want extra storage in the Mac Pro. And I do actually want to be able to plug in my DAC and my monitors and the displays and all that. And there's not enough ports. Like I just need more. So I am one of those people. There's not a lot of people that do need more than the Mac Studio. I think the Mac Studio is going to be just about as good as any content creator that I talk to will need. But I'm one of those people who's going to be waiting.
Yeah, 3D stuff and rendering is probably what they showed so much of that in the announcement.
Yeah.
But I can only assume the announcement for the Mac Pro is going to look so similar because those are the people who are really putting the weight on machines. And I think the new one's going to be better for them. This one's already amazing for them. The new one's going to be even better. But at a certain point, you're basically just advertising to those people who are like rendering insane scenes out.
That's the funny thing is like, it's going to be the most unrelatable Apple event ever. Like at least with the Studio, they could name it the Studio. And you know how they had that little setup where the lady was in front of a bunch of like things, like a house cut in half behind her.
Yeah.
They had like a photography studio. They had a videography studio, an animation studio. And like even those places don't need this computer, but hey, now look, you can do these huge HDR images and this new, workflow will be supported by it. And so that was, even if you're never in that situation, you can at least understand what I'm looking at. I'm looking at a video studio. Okay, this is called the studio computer. That's what it's for. How are they going to explain a Mac Pro that's not even for these studios? It's for like Hollywood, data centers, and the craziest workstations that somehow need more power than the Mac Studio.
Yeah.
I don't know how you make that relatable at all. Maybe that's just a short section of that's where they put it, WWDC. They're talking to developers. Developers know that's the type of stuff they need. You're compiling. All right, here's all the power you need.
And then
that's just how they lean in.
Will look exactly like the Mac Studio announcement looked like.
Yeah.
I have one more question kind of not to wrap it all up, but kind of at the end, nothing that was talked about, but some speculation, I guess. So we saw that they took the 27-inch iMac off of the website after this announcement.
Gone.
they said that they are now done with the entire Apple Silicon lineup now, except for Mac Pro.
Right.
So before this announcement, there were some rumors of people were all thinking upgraded M1, maybe iMac Pro comes out before Mac Pro. I don't think anyone was really, the Mac Studio was kind of a surprise. But so iMac Pro, is it dead? We know that Apple Silicon lineup, except for Mac Pro, is now completely announced. We now have the 27-inch studio monitor, which replaces the size of what the iMac Pro would be. And the iMac is now the smaller, like in my eyes is now iMac is just I'm a family computer at home. I can bring in my kitchen and do whatever and looks cool and has dumb white bezels thing. And now that's not a pro grade thing anymore.
You know what? When you put all the clues together and you look at the way Apple phrased a lot of things, I would say, yes, the iMac Pro is dead and not coming back.
I agree.
I'll combine the fact that they've said that the M1's done and they're just going to have one more thing, which is iMac Pro. That seems like the obvious thing. It's like, okay, no more iMac Pro. Yeah. You combine that with the fact that they literally have the same display as the iMac Pro in the studio display. So if you want an iMac Pro, you should just get a Mac Studio and a studio display.
Exactly.
That's about the same price, actually.
Probably.
Let's say you get $2,000 for the display and you get $5,000 for the computer, $7,000. That's what a high-end iMac Pro was. So that's another thing. And yeah, you put in the fact that like the iMac, if you were to create an iMac Pro from the current iMac, you need it to be redesigned again. That's a bunch of thermals. That's a new like heat sink that sticks way further off the back. Like if they haven't designed that and they said they're done adding to the lineup, sounds like it's not coming.
It makes me think that the old iMac Pro was a like really quick transition pro grade desktop because Mac Pro still wasn't out yet, but the old Mac Pro is so old and having issues, they didn't really have that in between of like, this is what professionals should use. And the main gripe with it was, if I'm a professional, I probably want two monitors doing a lot of these different workflows.
Or like a couple more ports.
Yeah. So now the Mac Studio and being able to have up to 3 monitors of the studio display feels like the clear
And now they
solution
get to call it modular. I'm doing air quotes, audio
yeah,
listeners.
that still really makes me
We modulate, we separated it from the display. So now you can just swap it out and put a different one if you want. There you go. It's modular.
Someone at Apple needs to learn what modular means for sure.
Well, I'm not holding my breath, but I think we'll see a truly modular Mac Pro at some point in 2022. And I think that's a positive note to end it on. I'm hoping. I'm crossing my fingers.
2022.
Audio listeners, 2022.
I hope so also.
Yeah. We'll
Don't
see.
know if I would bet on it.
We'll see. Either way, that's about it for this week. I mean, there's a bunch of videos on the channels now. You should definitely check out the green iPhone unboxing on the Shorts channel. Should be up the day this comes out.
Sometime,
Check out the full recap video for my thoughts. And obviously, they're a little more concise. This is a bunch of rambling. But hey, if you want that recap to share, that is there. And stay tuned for the reviews because we got to test these things out. Either way, that's been it for Waveform this week. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Catch you guys soon. Peace.
Waveform is produced by Adam Molina. We are partnered with Vox Media, and our intro-outro music was created by Vane Sill.